Welcome to the Bible reading journey where we are traveling from Genesis to Revelation in a year. If you have been here before, welcome back. If you are just joining us, welcome to the journey. And just jump in where we are because it is never too late to start. Lighthouse Ministry is happy to be traveling this road with you. Today we are on day number 90 of the Bible reading journey. Today's reading itinerary is the book of 2 Samuel, the last 4 chapters of the book, chapters 21 through 24. This is where you will want to pause and dive into those chapters for yourself, and then join us back here for thoughts about today's journey. Today's journey is titled David's Final Days. As usual, in the text notes is an outline of the book of 2 Samuel to guide us on our journey. Today we are on the final section of that outline, section 3C. 2 interesting overall notes about today's reading. One is we step out of the chronological order of events. And 2, the books, 1 and 2 Samuel, are bookended with praise. It opens with Hannah's prayer of praise in 1 Samuel 2 and closes with David's song of praise in 2 Samuel 22. In our chapters today, chapter 21, David avenges the Gibeonites and battles the Philistines. Read about these 2 events in chapter 21. David ends a 3-year famine that was brought about because of Saul's sins. And battle continues throughout the years with the Philistine giants. At this point in the Philistine battles, David is more challenged in the battle as he is getting older. But he is blessed with loyal and mighty warriors fighting for him. In chapter 22, David sings words of praise. This chapter is filled with beautiful words and imagery praising his God. Here is just one example from verses 31 through 34. God's way is perfect. All the Lord's promises prove true. He is a shield for all who look to him for protection. For who is God except the Lord? Who but our God is a solid rock? God is my strong fortress, and he makes my way perfect. He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, enabling me to stand on mountain heights. Read more in chapter 22 for David's words of praise. Chapter 23, David speaks final words and names his mighty warriors. David's final words recall God's promise about the line of David. Chapter 23 also highlights David's strong inner circle of warriors. The list points out the top 3 mighty warriors and then 30 more. 2 of those 30 get put at the top of the 30 mighty men of David list. And our last chapter today, and the last chapter in the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 24, David's census and painful punishment. The details and lack of details that we are told about this event leads to more questions than answers. Here is what we know from Scripture. 1. Israel and David sinned against God, yet the specifics of the sin are not mentioned. Chapter 24, verse 1 and verse 10. 2. Joab and the army commanders warned David against the census. David did not listen to the council and overruled them. 3. God gave David 3 choices of consequences. David responded. Verse 14 says, I'm in a desperate situation, but let us fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is great. Do not let me fall into human hands. 4. The consequence was delivered upon all of Israel in a plague. 5. It ended after 3 days, yet 70,000 deaths. 6. David built an altar, sacrificed offerings, and prayed. The chapter ends with this sentence in verse 25. And the Lord answered his prayer for the land, and the plague on Israel was stopped. Here is an interesting and motivating observation about the altar and the offering. David offered to buy the place where he was going to build the altar. The owner humbly and generously offered to give him both the place for the altar and the oxen for the offering. Here is King David's response in verse 24. No, I insist on buying it, for I will not present burnt offerings to the Lord my God that have cost me nothing. Thought of the day. What do our offerings to the Lord our God cost us? Challenge of the day. Sacrifice money to God that cost us something. Sacrifice time to God that costs something. Sacrifice talent to God that costs something. And cost isn't always financial. It obviously is with money, with sacrificing money. But when you sacrifice your time or talent, that cost may be in our time to sleep or free time, hobbies, overtime at work. Maybe the cost is in where we set our priorities and our activities, as well as our money. The text notes contain information on how to find us on YouTube, Facebook, and email. Happy travels today. See you next time. This is Lisa at Lighthouse. God bless.